What is going on, y'all? So we're back. Kind of have had a busy day so far. So I will have to make this a bit of a shorter episode today, but that's all right with me. Leapfrogging off of yesterday's episode of talking about the task manager, we kind of did some UI configurations. And what else did we do? We kind of built this UI here, and we got the Google Doc of just roughly what needs to be done. We pulled up some Jira, kind of bird's eye view of what I want to build. So, or dare I say, what we're going to build. Right. I figured out the issue yesterday, the issue with the front end portfolio. I was using an old version of Node when I was on an old blockchain project. I had switched to an old version of Node so Hard Hat would work, and it only worked with like Node version 14. So I had to install NVM and then use an older version of Node. So I'll just pop it over to NVM 16 or Node version 16. And boom, that fixed the front end bug that we were experiencing yesterday. So boom, front end application is working. I was talking a lot of crap about Next. My apologies to the Next team, but I think it's just a talent thing. You know what I mean? Like I'll get better as I use it, of course. I'm sure it's very, very close to React. I don't know all the little secrets and tricks of Next like I do React, or specifically Nuxt. I really, really understand Nuxt well, where they have like layout folders and pages folders. I'm sure it's similar here. But at the same time, I just want to, let's see. Boom. Okay. I just want a blank slate. Let's see what we got. No way. So it comes pre-configured with Tailwind. That is so cool. So we have our back end. We have our front end. Here's the front end, and the back end, I believe, is on localhost 3000 in Juan. Hello. Let me pop into that file. We have our route here. Which is going to end up being, I say a lot, and I'm going to work on that. I noticed that. I just did it. I'm going to work on that, though. I'm going to work on that. I promise. Let me configure some of the stuff here. Const, I want JSON data, or this will be task manager data, task data, right? For some of the tasks. Maybe I'll call it tasks data. This will be ID, task 1, starting the 0th index, that's fine. We'll have task name, to-do list or something. I go to store, fix bug 101. They're doing remodels here. So there's going to be some noises in the background. I just turned off my dryer so you guys could have a good experience and not hear a bunch of noises in the background, but can't win them all. There it is. So task data, I'm going to pass this into here. Let's see what we got. See if that'll pop it open. I believe this needs to be JSON. Sweet. So we have our little JSON objects of these bugs, or tasks, if you will. These are each supposed to be individual tasks with a ID. And if I pull up our UI and roughly look at, well, let me look at the Jira one. We're going to have a few different, actually, no, you know what? Let me look at the Kanban, because we're going to have a few properties associated with the task that I do need to roughly build. Oh, forgive me. I got to get that pop-up out of the way. That we're going to need task name, right? So it'll say survey design, right? Looks like we have a task priority. and we'll say low. I think I'll just have 3 types. So if I say type export interface task type of ID, it'll be a number. So this is TypeScript, those unfamiliar with it. Task name will be a string, right? Task priority though is going to be an enum, and what that's going to look like is, I'll show you guys. It'll have 3 choices it can be. Low, see the IntelliSense or the tab 9 is saying it's kind of auto-completing what I want. So we have these 3 types of task priority, which is low, medium, high, looks like. And I'll stick with those just to keep it somewhat contained. We'll have is task completed, which can be a Boolean value. And that'll keep track of each individual object. So that'll be right here, like is task completed. We'll say false as this piece of data, right? And maybe some task will be completed. So that's how one idea at least comes to mind to fix that. Each task does need an assignee. So we'll say task assignee, task assigned. Task assignee will be a profile, I'm sure, or some sort of profile name. Task assignee can be, so like this, my name is Ryan, my first name is at least. But on to the rest of the world, it's Pags. I feel like a lot of people don't even know my name is Ryan. They're like, who? A what? A where? What did you say? So task assignee, I guess this could be undefined or null, because sometimes task will exist without a task assignee. So, and that's like these guys, and I guess technically it could be a string of arrays is what, so the task might be assigned to multiple people, it looks like. It looks like there's 2 people assigned to this task. So it could be like 2 people, Ryan and John, it looks like. So we got the name, we have the is it completed, but maybe instead of is completed, because that's like the 3rd column, I'll have the task, and it can have 3 statuses. It'll be a task status, so instead of is completed, it'll be to do, in progress, or completed, or done, I guess, to be congruent with the UI naming. So I'll go with that instead of is completed, because is completed, if from a data standpoint, that would only differentiate the columns from to do in progress, or excuse me, from the done and completed column versus the other 2. And technically, if we have a Kanban of like to-do list, like a backlog, a in progress, and maybe something else that we might build down the road, and completed, or a done column, we need multiple statuses. And a Boolean value can only dictate is completed or not completed. So then I would have to get into is task completed, but is task in progress as well. You know, we'd have to layer more and more Boolean values, which you could do actually. But I think now that I'm thinking about it, a task status is going to be the way to do this. So a task will always have a status, and I think the status should be, and this should be task type, just like that. And it's going to throw an error here in TypeScript. This is why TypeScript is so beautiful. It'll let you know immediately that the data is not the right data. Even the task status as a string here shouldn't be a Boolean value. It should be one of these. So we'll say, because even a to-do task, I guess, technically there's to-do, but this is to-do that it's already assigned to somebody, right? So technically a task will exist in a pool or some sort of backlog where they're not assigned to anybody, and then they can be assigned to somebody, and then they would be in to-do category, an in-progress category, or a done category. So I think what I could do as an enum value, how would I do this? I could say type task status. isn't going to be low, medium. It'll be like backlog. And what else do we have? We have to do. So that would be like the assigned. And then we have in progress, which is going to be if I'm like working on the task, and then completed. Or I'll say done to be. And this will be a string like that. So should be one of those. So that way, if I pass in a value that's not one of these four as the task status, there's going to be an error as it's throwing here. So all tasks will start as backlog, but obviously this has an assignee. So we know it's probably not going to be in the backlog. It should be in the to-do. They kind of logically infer that. But let's say a task doesn't have an assignee and it's just in the backlog. Like this is the original task that just got assigned. It has an ID. That's going to make sense in my brain a little bit more. Okay, so I think that kind of gets us at least some functionality here. Some of the data we'll need. Oh, I think I did timestamp as well. So we're going to need task date created. Because I don't know if you guys remember, there's, and I'll put a random timestamp for now. But I don't know if you guys remember, but I inferred on wanting like a timeline, if you will. I'm gonna change that to task ID. I like having everything, at least data. I like it all literally saying the same data that it belongs to. Like the task data should all be prefixed with task in my mind. It's just really easy to, across the entire tech stack, especially on the front end and back end, it's easy to find and rename and do what you need to do. Versus like, I know some people will say these are tasks, and then they'll just call this ID. They'll just say like date created. And that works fine, but the problem is when it doesn't work fine is when, is like on the front end, let's say you're looping through task data, and then you also have like profile data. And let's say there's profiles that are kind of similar to this, right? And let's say they say profile data. And instead of saying profile ID, you just have ID here and ID here. Well, on the front end or literally on any other part of the application, actually even, it still is relevant to the back end too. If you're looping through it and you have ID and then an ID over here, it's like, what are you kind of working with? And obviously you could tell pretty quick, but I don't know. I like to do stuff where I don't have to think even 2 seconds about it. It's just like, boom, it's so obviously the task ID because it says the task ID that I don't have to think even 1 extra second about it. That's my opinion. Again, I don't know all though, but even though I like to think I do at times, you know what I mean? As I think we all like to do, but yeah, that's why I'm very verbose in the naming personally. And I know some people aren't. I know some people are or even more verbose, but that's roughly how I would do it. Task assigned at. Oh, you know what? I wonder if the task status. I'm trying to think about this. Because I want these timelines to also indicate roughly when, and I think the task status can actually handle all this. Like when the task was created, and I want it also like when the task was assigned, so when it went from backlog to to-do list, and then also when it was completed. Like those would be like kind of important things, or at least from to-do to completed. I think that would be important. But now that I'm thinking about it, I think I can do this all in here. If these were all objects and this had a name and with the name, it had a timestamp associated to it. So I think if all of them did this, I wouldn't need. Okay, let's see. So to do. what did I just say that was? In progress, okay. In progress. And done. So this would literally, I don't think we'll need task created in that anymore because it indicates it with the object here. So it should technically be coming in as an object with the name backlog and then some timestamp associated with it. It would be like that, right? So with that, I know when the backlog's created, that's when the task was created. And this will end up being a array with these things. So then I'll just push another task status in here. This is getting a little bit nerdy. I love it. And to do, and then this will be some other timestamp in front of that timestamp above. And I'll know, okay, that's when it was assigned, when it got changed to do. And then vice versa, when someone changes it to in progress, I'll, it'll be some timestamp in front of that, right? And then vice versa, when it's completed and done, it'll be some timestamp in front of that. So I think that kind of does these things where I can drag and drop them to each column and then fire off a function and push these things in depending on the function that I'm, if I drag it into to-do list, I assign it a task to myself, it'll be this one. So every task will be created with a backlog and a timestamp. And maybe I can create them, well, maybe not. I'll have to think about it. I'll have to think about how that's going to work out. And then I guess in theory, technically, they could drag a task. Let's say they don't complete it quite yet. Maybe in theory, they could drag it from to do to in progress and then back to do, and then maybe back to in progress and then back to completed or done, excuse me. I guess technically they could drag a task from this window. They could drag it to do, then back to in progress. So I'll have to figure out how this is going to work. I think the task will be shown by the last index of the task status array. So whatever the last item is, that's where the task will currently be, of course. That makes sense. But on the timeline, I'm going to be curious how I'm going to have to plot these on a timeline if I have timelines. Again, the timeline was a bit of a bonus one, but I really think it would be cool to add. So I'm going to have to think about that, but it's going to be certainly a challenge. So we've kind of ideated a little bit here, server, but I'm going to clean this up. I don't want it in the server. I want this in its own. Let's see, I'm going to have types here. I wonder, is it possible to, in a mono repo to just have types exist? Like utility functions and types exist outside of the repo, and then everything can access it. I don't know if you can do that. I know sometimes so point being, because there's date formatting things I want, there's going to be task type.ts, but there's going to be multiple things that could be used on the front end repo and the back end repo that I'm wondering if let's see, do I need to export that? I don't know if I do or don't. But I wonder if I can reuse some of this stuff on the front end and back end repos with one folder instead of having to make types on the front end and types on the back end, and just gets redundant and annoying. So let's see. What did I call this? Task type. Don't know if I can do this or not. Would be really cool though. Oh, no, that's too far. Types. Nice. Okay, I can. So that's awesome. Then I will most likely do that, I think, where I'll have some sort of utils folder for utilities. And I'll put types in there. I'll have helper functions. Let me just make that folder. I already know I'm going to use date formatters and things like that. And these will be functions. Utilities, helpers, yeah. Functions.js, and what did I pull? I made one earlier that I'm going to use. Let's go to my good old trusty intern here, ChatGPT. Boom. Here we go. So that's going to be a date formatter that I'll use. And task type. Great. Already changed us properly. Got us dialed. That's awesome. That's awesome. So then I could literally build. This project can get really big. I already know it's going to be a chunky thing. I think if I can figure out Swagger and generating contracts and using and writing YAML files to generate the contracts so the front end and back end technically can communicate. I don't need to do that, but that's technically what this area would be, is like writing the contracts and stuff. So this is where our contracts will go. So that'll probably be something I need to brush up and look into on. But let's just kind of get to building a little bit of the front end, and that's going to wrap it up for today. I know that's oh, sweet. So this is what our task will look like, is some sort of ID associated. Maybe I won't do a number. Maybe it'll be a UU or GUID. So yeah, but this is awesome. I think that's a lot to curate on the front end and to collect data on the back end. We got timestamps associated with it, and like I said, we can format the date on these timestamps. So if I go to, let me check. Let's see what this function can do. If I can export, import that from utils, helpers, functions, right? Is that where it's coming from? Utils, helpers, functions. Types, utils. Okay, why can I not do that? Format declared. Format date is declared, but its value is never read. Export default, is that what I need to do? Is it just literally use it? Why is it giving me a little something? What's going on? Types, is types not in that? Oh, okay, so types is not in that folder. Weird. So how is this reading types though? That's so interesting. So we have the back end, we have the front end and utils, right? Saying get backend. Okay, well, point being is at some point I'm gonna have to format these dates and timestamps to at least make them legible, at least on the front end side. On server side, maybe not as big of a deal. I would like it to be all human readable though, but to each his own, I suppose. Okay, what happened to our server? We're back up and running. Server back up. Okay, cool. So that I got Postman back into back into my life, which is great. So then we can build some routes and say, for instance, app dot, this endpoint will be like task, and then we'll have like a task ID endpoint, and we could say const task index, right? And it'll be rec.params.id. So that's taking the request parameters, the one named and labeled .id, which would happen to be that. I could even label this task ID to be congruent. Or I guess task ID technically would be that. And then with task data, I could pop that in. And I think if I had multiple tasks, so if I label this one task 1, this could be task 102. I could do 3 different tasks and see if this will work. So we have task 103. So if I go to task, and technically this endpoint should be tasks, not just the home page. So the home page should be nothing like this. Or let me build out the home page real quick. I can just say like home. Let me do that, boom. So that's just going to be our, what do we have in here? Task index. Oh, I need to wrap this with number, I believe. I think that solves that problem. And let's get our port back up and running. Oh, not code with Mosh, great guy though. But let's pop open our Express example, and we're gonna make a new request, add request. And I'm going to name it task. Postman is for those that don't know, it's a web tool that we can use to test endpoints very quickly. So when they're set up, it takes a little bit of time to set up, of course, but when you set it up, and I'll show you the slow way of doing this, but when you set it up, I guess we just have them there. So let's see, if I test the endpoint, I should get all these tasks and see all the data from the server, which I do. And then if I test this endpoint, say task, and let's say task 1, I should get just one of them in theory. And I do, I get the one with ID number 1. So the other way to do it is you just literally, back to code with Mosh, great guy. The other way is you just test it in browser instead of using Postman or Insomnia. You could just test it here. You just go to your route that ends in /. So these routes are just after HTTPS, localhost 3000, right? Or 3001 in this case. That's this route, is just the one that ends in /. And then the one that ends in task would be the task one. Boom. Not task pool, but task. So that's all of our data here, which is what we just saw earlier, right up here. This is all the same exact data. And then if we do task /1 or 2, that's the task ID, the request parameter. So if I say 2, I should see the task with the ID 2, which we do see. If I see the task with ID 1, boom, we're right there. We're in business, folks. So that's a little bit on the backend side. Now on the front end, let's maybe swap over to the front end. We are going to have to build out some of the functionality over here. And let me just get out of the server. Loving that it's in TypeScript. That's so awesome to me. Let's see, they do have a layout component. I just need to read up on Next and see how it works. But I'll kind of build some of this application on the front end right now. I'll try to get some of those task querying on the front end. And I do know we're going to need Axios on the front end. So I'll npm I Axios and npm I at type/Axios. Then I'll npm run dev. I'm doing it while it's downloading. You can do that. I already put my command in. And I'll import Axios. And let's see what we can do. Let's see, and I need to import state as well. So use state, boom, from React. And I'll say const all task, and I'll say get or set all task equals use state, and this would technically be our task type, which conveniently enough on the backend we have a type folder, or not in the backend, not in either actually, but we have a type folder that I tried to reference earlier in the utils, the types, and the task type, that I could pull the type in from both sides, the front end and back end, and I'll have this structure, the schema of each one of these tasks. And that's what this is. That's what these are right here. And the reason why we want that, instead of in the front end repo having a task type and the back end repo having a task type, is literally so I don't have to maintain both. That's a lot of work. If I down the road, I'm like, you know what, this task priority idea or this timestamp idea didn't work really well. Maybe I'll go back to is completed. I just have to change it in this type, and then throughout the rest of the project, wherever the data is being accessed. But I won't have to actually like change to, like, it's a little bit less work is all I'm trying to communicate. And wherever we could save work, it's a good thing to do. And it's also one less layer of complexity. So any additional node of complexity and like an algorithm and a program and a company and in anything, right? Like it just makes things that much harder to maintain or that much harder to build upon in the future. So anytime you can streamline stuff, it's a good idea to do so. And there's probably places everywhere where I could definitely streamline and be smarter about. I'm not here to say I'm like the smartest developer in the world, because I've crossed paths with very, 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 very talented guys. And that's just the reality of it, is like there's some really, really, really brilliant minds out there. But the point is you want to what's it called? Not make things harder than they need to be. And even in a, like I said, company, building a program, building money, like the thing with the least moving pieces that still gets the job done is the best way, in my opinion. I could maybe be wrong, but I imagine that's probably for everything. Like the thing with the least amount of moving pieces that works. And if two systems do the same exact thing, like the output's the same, I think I wouldn't say in every case, but I would say in the overwhelming majority of cases, like 90+% of them, it seems to me that the thing with the less moving pieces would probably be the smarter thing to do. And that's just all I'm trying to narrate here, is just have less moving pieces if you can. And please chime in if someone knows how to make even less moving pieces, because that's what this is all about. I would love to just get better, and I think building this journey, for me, the beautiful part is going to be getting better and better, right? Like the fact that I do, let's see, as task React node. Oh, this needs to be async await, I believe. But I think that's what's going to happen a lot with this, is I'm going to get hopefully better by recording all this and just becoming hopefully a better software engineer as a whole. I think that's the goal here. Getting a little bit of thing. So if I go all task, I map task and say task ID, I believe we did. And I'll say this will be task type, and this actually needs to be an array of tasks that I'm getting. Let's see if that'll fix our problems. Use state, what is the error here? And we need index, and that'll be a number. And we'll say key. Let's see if we can get these tasks up here, and then I'll probably call it a wrap on today. Let's see. Use state. Why is that an issue? Pull up the console, the OG console. Dare I say, it's giving me no error. The backend I think is still working, right? Task. If I say that, am I not doing this right? So I'm querying it, and then I thought on the front end, use state. You're importing a component that needs use state. It only works client component, but none of your parents are marked with use client. So they're server components by default. Okay. Let me ask my trusty intern, ChatGPT. Get him off screen real quick. Pull him up. And can you fix this Nuxt.js code? Here is the front end. Here is the back end. And let me go to my index on the back end, or we named it server. Okay. Okay, trusty old use effect is what it's saying I need. I forgot about use effect. In all honesty, completely forgot about that. So it's saying we do need that. And I'll put a dependency array in there. And what that dependency array does is make sure it just runs once. Let's see if that helps. It's saying I need this in the back end. I forgot to use this on the back end. And I'll just go ahead and copy and paste that on the front end. Let's see if this fixes everything. No, we still have some sort of server component type issue. I know that server components are kind of new with React. I'm unfamiliar with them. It's something I will most certainly need to look into. Empty dependency array. Oh, it did add that as I had mentioned. So it's saying, okay, put that function into the use effect and just run it from the use effect. Got it. Okay, that's what it's doing. Background red 100. Don't actually want that. That was just for a little test. Okay. So why is it doing this? You're importing a component that needs use effect. It only works a client component marked with use client. So there's server components by default. Interesting. Oh. I really do enjoy stuff like this though, where it's kind of just coming together a little. We're using TypeScript, we're setting up the back end, the front end. We're running into little issues, but overall, I think we're making strong progress. You know, I've got a rough idea of the task from a data standpoint, what it's going to look like. The front end, maybe I should be more concerned with. I did ultimately make the decision that I'm going to stick with Nuxt.js. I think if you followed the series yesterday in episode 2, that I was very much opposed to maybe not using Nuxt.js because I'm not as familiar with how it's working. But I think in spirit of learning and you know, with the advent of AI and stuff, I think maybe it's going to be one of those things that you know, you just roll with the punches and learn as you go type thing. Build it as you fly it, and I'll certainly build it and fly it, you know. So that's kind of the goal out of this application or this build as a whole is stretch myself, learn. It's going to be challenging. There's going to be stuff like this, of course, on the way where you're just like, how does this work? How do you do that? But over the long haul of the next 2 to 3 months, maybe, ultimately, hopefully I become a stronger developer, and hopefully it's a good time overall. That's kind of the goal. It's not to necessarily have a perfect, smooth developer experience. That'd be amazing if I could just shred through code like line after line. But I think there's something to be said when you're like wrestling with stuff and then you're like, oh, I finally got it after, and it could be something so dumb. Like right now, I'm sure there's some next developer watching this like, dude, it's literally the easiest thing. You just need to do this. Because it looks like an easy thing. Import use state use effect from React. You're importing a component that needs use effect. It only works in a client component, but none of its parents. Okay, let's just go ahead and read some docs. Let's go here. Let's start there. React Essentials to build applications with Nuxt.js. It helps to be familiar with React. Ooh, especially server components. Interesting. So while I was over at Babson, I was watching these server components come out with React, and I wanted to try them, but we were so deep in the Vue ecosystem that and getting ready for launch that I didn't have a ton of time. And in fairness, I wanted to build other stuff outside of front-end applications. I spent a lot of my nights after work just kind of wrestling with blockchain applications and other ideas I wanted to build. Sometimes it gets a little bit, doing this, like even towards the end of my time at Babson, I was like trying to get on the back end stack more. At least just begin that switch over. Because I was just getting like not overwhelmed or irritated, but somewhere where you're just like not enjoying the front end stack as much. So I think I was like craving something like this, where it is a larger build, like a back end integration, where we're gonna have to learn databases together and something where getting the hands dirty, right? All right, let's read. So you may be thinking, why server components? What are the advantages of using them over client components? Server components allow developers to better leverage server infrastructure. For example, you can move data fetching to the server closer to your database and keep large dependencies that previously would impact the client JavaScript bundle size on the server. Makes sense? Leading to improved performance. Server components make writing a React application feel similar to PHP or Ruby on Rails, but with the power and flexibility of React and the component model of templating UI. So it sounds like they had single page applications and they had a change to put single page applications on the client side, and then they retrofitted single page applications to go back to kind of server side rendered applications. And my understanding was all of it was built on the server with the pages, but now reading this, I think what they're also doing is leaving the data for the components on the server, it sounds like. Interesting. With server components, the initial page load is faster, and the client side bundle size is reduced, so that's awesome. The base client-side runtime is cacheable and predictable, and the size and does not increase as your application grows. Great. Okay, so how do we use them is the question. Use client. Is that just to make them back to client side? Is that what that would do? I think that's what that does, but I do want to do it on the server side. I think that'd be cool to use clients. TypeScript, okay, use state. Let's just import this real quick, delete all this, and see if You clicked. Okay, so that looks like just a traditional React application. It sits between server only and client mode. It's placed on top of a file above imports. Okay, the cutoff use client is defined in a file. All the modules. Okay. When to use server and client components. That's a good thing. Okay, so fetching data, server component. And that's what we're doing. Access to backend resources, server component. Okay, add interactivity, client component. I see. Use reducer, use state, use effect. Okay, so we are going to be using state life cycles with this. But fetching the data is going to be on the server side. So, but handling the data on the front end will be client side components, I guess. So let's see, patterns, moving client component leaves. I just need to know how to ultimately do this on the server side. This looks like these are example from server components. Okay, let's just ask our trusty old ChatGPT, right? Can you make this server component? Let's see.